It can only be attributable to human error.
You're entering paranormal.
He meddled in things that you think will work. He meddled in things. He meddled in things.
Where will we go next? It's a phantom from another time.
He meddled in things.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hi, I'm Alex Kaiju. Across from me,
Eli Watson.
and to my left,
Stephen Myers.
and we are
Cryptid Campfire. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. John Stamey. John, how are you doing?
I am doing great, and I am really excited to be here with you guys.
Well, I'm glad to have you on here.
Yeah, excited to have you here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh my goodness, that's frightening. Okay. I am Dr. John Stamey. I'm a former college professor, and I do have a real doctorate. And I've always been interested in the paranormal ever since I was a kid. As I tell my story goes, when I was a kid, we didn't have the internet, and so on Saturday, all we got to do was watch wrestling from 12 o'clock noon to 2 o'clock, and then we got to watch Shock Theater, which were all those great old horror films from Universal Films.
Oh,
and
dope.
I just knew one day that I just wanted to be the paranormal guy. And so when I left college teaching and everything, I got to do it. I've been writing books. I put on a number of Bigfoot conferences. I put on the South Carolina Lizardman Festival. And now I do have a great time, but it's hard work. You've got to be dedicated to your craft. You've got to be attentive. You've got to try to write good books, get them edited well, and all that. But it's fun. And I've met a lot of wonderful people, especially you, Eli Watson.
Hey.
Because there you were just sitting there on the internet and said you had a podcast, and you know me. I said, hey, what's up?
That's how it happened.
Podcast and Cryptids, and then you've been on my podcast, Scary Cast.
Yep.
Every night at 10 p.m., and that's 10 p.m. Eastern. And now I'm here on your podcast, which is only Cryptid Campfire. And I'm really glad to be with you and your hosts, Alex and Stephen. It's great. So thank you very much for having me. And by the way, I am from the sun and fun capital of the world, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where it is freezing right now.
Oh,
Get
Jay.
me to L.A., buddy. Get me there.
It's actually kind of cold out here.
Oh, okay. Now don't tell me that.
Damn it, Steve.
So what are we talking about? We're talking about your new book, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Well, first of all, I wanted to let everyone know, like any good paranormal researcher, I'm sitting here with my dowsing rods. You guys know what dowsing rods are?
I do, but I don't think Alex and Stefan know.
I have a faint idea.
Enlighten us, please.
I'd love some explanation.
All right. Let me tell you about dowsing rods and their kissins, which is called stick. Okay, it's very interesting. First of all, dowsing rods have been used for thousands of years by people that have some type of paranormal abilities, or just at least a little bit of ESP. They've been used to find water. And in fact, in England, even today, a lot of abilities use people with dowsing rods to find their old water lines that they've lost maps of and everything. So, and they really do work. All it is, it takes two 4-gauge copper wires. They need to be 22 inches long, and then you bend them. They need to be 15 inches and then 7 inches. And you hold them, and you go up, and these copper dowsing rods, unlike the wooden dowsing rods, these like tend to seek and search and find energy. Now, like I'm sitting here in front of my computer, and they're crossing because they're finding energy. Now, I have a very, very close friend of mine who passed away, gave me a picture of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i Faith. And I always keep this picture of Baha'u'llah with me because I'm very much Christian, and in some of the iffy circumstances that I get in, it's good to have all the positive, good help that I can get. So I took these dowsing rods, and I took them over to my picture of Baha'u'llah, and they crossed. Because apparently there's a massive amount of energy in that picture of a holy man. And I think that's really interesting.
Whoa, that's crazy.
That is interesting.
That's what dowsing rods are. You can use wood, but we use copper over here. Then there's something called stick, and that's personal dowsing. And it's a way to help learn how to use their psychic abilities even better. And what it is that you can use two fingers, your index finger and your middle finger, put together as a dowsing rod. And if you have three alternatives, and you keep moving your two fingers all the way back and forth along the three alternatives, or two, or whatever, all of a sudden one's going to start to stick to you. You're going to start feeling, and that is called stick. It's part of radionics, and that's something maybe we can talk about another time. But here's an example of how I used it. It's a funny example, but it's the truth. One of my buddies, he's my attorney, and not only is he my attorney, he's one of the best friends I've ever had. And we always have breakfast on New Year's morning because he and his wife have a house down here. And so he said, "Oh, John, I've got a picture of me and two of my cousins. I want you to pick out which one is the oldest." And of course, he looks much younger than the other two. And I didn't know, so I just took my finger and I just kept running over the three of them. And all of a sudden, I started feeling a pull over his image. I said, "Now, Tom, I don't know how crazy this sounds, but you're the oldest." He said, "How did you know?" I explained to him. He said, "Well, whatever. Even Bigfoot. All he believes in is that I do make a living from some Bigfoot festivals and Lizardman." But that's how stick works. And if you Google up stick, S-T-I-C-K, and radionics, you'll find some information about it. And with very little training on anyone's part, we can all use stick. And it's akin as what I call personal dowsing, because instead of dowsing rods made out of copper, you just use two fingers. So that's what I've been doing. I know that sounds crazy, but I love talking about it because it's fun, it's interesting, and it teaches you a lot about the paranormal world. But yeah, we want to talk about Lizardman, and we want to talk a little bit about Bigfoot.
Yeah, right.
Heck
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're both kind of big parts of my life. Here's how I got into all of this. When I left professoring, I was doing a podcast, and my guest was working on a film called The Culture of Bigfoot. It was about people that search for Bigfoot. It was kind of a neat topic. And he said, this was in 2017, and this was in August. He said, "Well, the 50th anniversary of the Patterson-Gimlin footage of Bigfoot, that's the footage out there in California,
Right.
where they saw Bigfoot walking the images and everything." So they said, it's coming up in just about 8 or 9 weeks. And it's the 50th anniversary in the state. And I had an idea. And you better be careful, Eli, when I get those ideas. So I had two co-hosts and my guest. So they were doing good. So I went online and I registered TennesseeBigfoot.com. I don't know why I picked Tennessee. And then I went to Bays Mountain Park and I submitted, along with a charge card, a reservation to have a Bigfoot conference up there. So at the very end of the show, I said, "Well, by the way, I'd like to announce that in 9 weeks, on October the 20th, 21st, and 22nd, we're going to have the first annual Tennessee Bigfoot Conference, and I want to invite everyone to come." And all my co-host said, "Well, what's going on?" I said, "Well, while y'all were busy talking, I put a conference together, so it's great." So we went up there. We had over 500 people. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, wow.
I have to thank the the city of Kingsport, Tennessee, for letting us work with them, and it's a tourism event. And me and my co-hosts, we're now going to be running their Halloween event up in Kingsport at Bays Mountain Park. It's big. It's a big park. It's on top of a mountain. Absolutely gorgeous. I invite all of you to fly out here Halloween. It'll be great.
Oh, yeah,
Anyway,
that's crazy.
So we had a good conference. And so on Monday morning, I packed up my bags from the hotel, got in the car, and Kingsport is in eastern Tennessee. So what I do to get home is I get down to Columbia, South Carolina, and I go from Kingsport to Charlotte to Columbia, and then head on east to Myrtle Beach. So I got to Columbia, and then I got outside Columbia about 45 minutes, and I saw this sign that said Bishopville Highway 15. And I said, oh my goodness, South Carolina doesn't have a Lizardman festival.
I mean, Bishopville is the way.
This is great. So I'm in the left lane. And I just ordered the right lane to get off, and I almost ran somebody off the road. They're still okay, I guess. So I went to the Chamber of Commerce office, and they were closed. And I said, well, I'm coming back tomorrow, and they don't know what's getting ready to hit them. So I came back the next day, and I went in and saw this really nice lady named Deanna. And I said, Deanna, I'm John Stamey. I run the Tennessee Bigfoot Conference, and we need to do a Lizardman Festival, don't we? She gave me the biggest smile in the world. She said, I love Lizardman.
Wow.
Margaret over there at State Farm, and so does everybody. We love Lizardman. So let's do a Lizardman Festival. So we did. And we had Lyle Blackburn there. I guess you might know who Lyle is. He's a well-known author.
Right.
Super was Lizardman, the true story of the Bishopville monster. So we had that there. The next year we had it at the Button Museum a little farther out of town, a little closer to the swamp. And now I'm getting ready to pick a location to have the Neckman Festival. So what happened is during that first Lizardman Festival, see, I own a little company called Carolina Caricatures. And I wanted to, there aren't any books other than Lyle's books. So I had my caricature artist, Cody. I had him draw pictures of, kind of the players that were in the Lizardman saga. Christopher Davis, who saw Lizardman on that famous night in July of 1988. Liston Barfield, Truesdale, the sheriff, and a number of other people. And I wrote kind of a little bio about each one of them. And that became the Lizardman Festival Coloring and Storybook. Sold out. People loved it. So then I started writing a column for the newspaper in Bishopville about Lizardman. Some kind of scientific things about, why could Lizardman really exist, and all kinds of things like that. So did that for about a year. So the next time we had the Lizardman Festival, I put that inside the coloring book. Sold out as well. And so with actually, as I was talking to Eli, probably ought to get going. I ought to write a real book. Take that material, get some other stories together, and let's have something that people could buy on Amazon. So I've been working on that for the last couple of months and almost done with it. And so it's going to be called Lizardman 101. Got a lot of neat stories about it. And then I said, well, Eli, if you got time, could I come on and talk about the book? So he said, well, sure, John. Why not?
Absolutely.
And so this is why we're here, boys.
Yeah.
It all makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Crazy as it is, it all makes sense.
Wake up, America!
And do you have a story you could share with us from this book or no?
Well, that's kind of like, I like to talk. In fact, I like to talk too much. So how about if I have two stories to share with you? How's that?
All right.
Oh,
that,
damn.
that
2
works.
for 1 deal.
That works.
Double or nothing.
Okay. First of all, there have been stories about Lizardman in Lee County and Bishop, really, as long as people can remember. And you can you can correlate appearances of Lizardman and other cryptids, such as Bigfoot, with extreme heat and drought. The early 1910s were that way. And people remember appearances of some kind of cryptid. the early 30s, the same way. Because I'm around Lee County, and I talked to people. I talked to some of the older people. It was really kind of neat, the stories that they had. And then 88 and 89, but especially 1988, was super hot. Almost no rain. And as one of the locals told me, he said, you know, John, if there's no rain up here, there's no fresh water to push in the rivers and the swamps out to the ocean. So that salt water creeps up and in toward the Midlands of South Carolina. And that's what I think happens, is that it pushes these entities up here, and this is why we have stories of Lizardman, especially in 1988, they had 13 sightings.
Whoa.
So that's, you know, pretty much the scientific explanation of what happened. Well, we had the 88, 89, and 90s. ABC Good Morning America showed up in Bishopville to watch and look for Lizardman, of all things. I mean, this was going viral before the internet, and it was just crazy. So, people they sold T-shirts, they did everything. It was a lot of fun. It was a little scary. It was very interesting. But the residents of Bishopville keep telling me that they would hear howling out there at Scape or Swamp. Scape or Swamp came from the name escaped horror.
Whoa.
What happened during the Revolutionary War, the British troops who were trying to occupy that whole area between Camden and Bishopville and Columbia. And what happened is they wanted some fun, so they called in some ladies of the evening for a while, and all of a sudden they got attacked by our troops, and they had to tell the ladies of the evening, you need to leave. And so they pushed them out, and they said, you better get out of here. They pushed them towards Scape, well, whatever the swamp was called back then, and then it was called Escaped Horror Swamp. Well, now, of course, you know, when you get to the 1920s, political correctness was a lot like it is today. So instead of Escaped Horror Swamp, it was Scape O-R-E, Swamp. So that's how the name got changed. But the stories still remain. And Lyle did a great job in his book of talking about, you know, what all happened. He did a bunch of interviews. He got a lot of documentation, and his book is very good. And I recommend it to everybody. So what happened was the Lizardman craze came and went between 1988, 1989, and 1990, and it started getting, you know, a little less dry, a little less hot, you know, unseasonably hot. So, you know, people kind of forgot about it, but there were still reports of the Lizardman in that area. There were truckers back in the early 90s. Those were the days of the CB radios. Y'all ever heard of CB radios?
Yeah, Smokey and the Bandit.
You got it. Well, so people were talking, and what would happen is, I mean, this is, you know, we're out in the country, and all they had was television with antennas, and so in the kitchen they'd have the CB radio, and then in the living room or the den they'd have the television on the on the antenna, switching it around, trying to get local stations. So they used to hear some stories about truckers that saw some strange entity running around toward the swamp on Highway 34, which cut directly through Skateboard Swamp.
Ooh.
And so, well, yeah, it was kind of crazy. There was one where a trucker was sitting there trying to get, and he saw a guy drive up, stop, get out of his car, run across a field on his right, and then here came some kind of creature that picked up his car and ran off toward the left into the swamp.
Whoa. He
said, I'm getting out of here. And now this is a story told by someone, I know his name, I know where he works, and I know his family. And they're fairly reputable people, they really are. And so that was kind of crazy. And I kept hearing these stories. I kept hearing stories about Bigfoot when people would go out in the swamp, in the money's and everything, and they would be pestered by the big dude, 10, 11, 12 feet tall, 1,500, 1,600 pounds tall, and they described him. So the swamp was kind of a hotbed of what we would call paranormal and cryptid activity. Now, this is Cryptid Campfire, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you got it.
Well, that's why we're talking about this right now. So
Heck yeah.
Here's a very distressing story. Of course, my friends all know that I do research about this, and whenever they find something, they always try to tell me and say, well, John, you might want to look into this. And in 2012, when the world was supposed to end, remember that, right?
Mm-hmm. That's when Man of Steel came out.
Pardon?
Oh, that was when Man of Steel, the Superman movie, came out.
Was that
the Mayan
2013?
calendar ended and all this. Well, what happened? These two boys came down from the Charlotte area. They were high school students. They were 17 and 18 years old, and they decided one night in October, they were drunk at a party. They were drinking a lot of beer, and they decided they wanted to drive down to Myrtle Beach and watch the sun come up.
Dang.
Wow. Now, I'm going to tell you what, after a 24-pack, you get a 17 and an 18-year-old boy wanting to drive down to Myrtle Beach and watch the sun come up the next morning. That is a recipe for disaster. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what happened, the story goes, they left the party about 1:30 in the morning, stopped off and got some more beer, got back in the car, and started driving down Interstate 77 from Charlotte to Columbia, and then they were going to go from Columbia down to Interstate 20 toward Myrtle Beach. Well, the last they were, of course, on the phone and talking and texting everybody until about 2:45 in the morning, and they didn't say anything else to anybody, no more communications. I guess they thought it was kind of late, or that's what we would assume. They never got to Myrtle Beach. They vanished. So their parents, about 11 o'clock the next morning, called the State Highway Patrol. I mean, they didn't know who else to call. They called them in Columbia, South Carolina. They said, our two boys left. They went to Myrtle Beach. That's what they say. They heard from them until about 3 o'clock in the morning. We don't know where they are. Please help us. So a statewide manhunt ensued. And they walked. The bureaus walked from Fairfield County, right above Columbia, South Carolina. They walked down to Columbia, and then they walked over to Florence. And they also checked with all of the hotels in Myrtle Beach to see they checked in. And unfortunately, they had not checked in. Just went by, and they could not find these boys. And then someone had an idea. It's like, well, they must be in the water, because if we can't see them from the road, they must be in the water. And so they started in Fairfield County, right above Columbia, just in the middle of the state. They went down to Columbia. Then the next time that they found water was in Kershaw County, where Camden, South Carolina is located. So they got to the Lake Wateree River at exit at mile marker 95, and they walked down between the bridges, and they found, unfortunately, a car bumper.
Ooh.
And it had the license plate number of these boys. So it went into high gear. And about 6 hours later, they had a large crane pull up a Pontiac GT, 2006 Pontiac GT. It was upside down in the water, and it pulled up, and the boys had died of asphyxiation. They had died of drowning in Buck Creek. But now here's the story. They couldn't have gotten down there to Buck Creek because there was a barricade to keep you from driving down there, like South Carolina has.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, the car was upside down. Now, if you're going to go down an embankment and into a river, you're not going to flip over, I don't think. And furthermore, one of the policemen said, "Oh, well, what happened was they launched off of the surface there, off the grassy area. They cleared a bunch of trees. They flipped over. They lost the bumper and landed upside down in the creek." Now, I've spoken with some friends that are in the car racing business, and I said, if you've got a level ground and you've got grass, how fast do you have to be going to launch over a bunch of trees and go down in a creek? And they said you'd have to be going 100, 125 miles an hour if you're on the grass, because you just can't leap. You can't go off of flat land and leap over something unless you're going fast as all get out. That's what we say down here.
Right.
So I went around in the Camden area, and a lot of people know me there, and I asked a couple of them. I'd pull them to the side. Let me ask you about this. And I asked a very good friend, I mentioned her name. I said, what do people say? This is, in a small town, there's the person that knows everything. You guys know about that person in small towns, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
There's somebody who knows everything. And she said, John, we thought that was wrong. We thought that was like something like Lizardman, that it just picked those boys up and it just flopped them into the creek. I've heard that from several people. I have discussed this with all retired law enforcement people, and they were very unhappy about the verdict. So, what can you say? There are crosses right before that bridge. Those parents have gone through a lot. I do not mention the names, and I don't mention a lot of details about it, because those parents have been through a lot. They lost their boys. Mm-hmm. But it is very suspect that they could have wound up upside down in a creek where there is a barricade that you couldn't have gotten down there. So there's my first Lizardman story. It's very distressing. And what I have done, and this is how I do a lot of my investigation. Eli, can I talk about some secrets here?
Sure.
Oh.
We're doing, that's right, guys. We're doing darky affairs here. Darky being an old 60s term for meaning the CIA, the FBI, and black, and all that stuff. So what I do, and this will tie into my next story. What do you do when an event happened 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 years ago, and you have no photographic record? How do you investigate that incident? I'm going to take a poll. All right? So how do you investigate something that happened a long, long time ago? I'm going to start with, in reverse order, Stephen. How do you do that?
It's Stefan, by the way. It's not a huge deal.
Stephen, I'm sorry.
That's
Stephen,
totally fine.
How do you do that? How do you investigate something like that?
I guess
There were no witnesses.
my go-to would probably try and recreate the crash, if possible.
All right, Alex, how do you investigate it?
I'd say maybe check like the library or the town hall and see if there's any old records.
Okay.
My answer was kind of similar, actually.
Eli, what do you do?
I'll check old records. That's what I would do. Police records or something.
All right, well, here's what I do. Because I'm in the business of the paranormal, I know a number of remote viewers. Remote viewers are psychics who can tune back into a time and they can see what happened. I've used them several times, and I've corroborated what they've told me with what actually happened. So I have used 2 remote viewers to try to view back to what happened. And here's what they told me. Both of them did independently. They said, number one, the boys were not drunk. Now, this is two completely different people
Mm-hmm.
dialing into the past. They said, number one, they were not drunk. Number two, they saw something, a large figure, and they stopped. They got out. And unfortunately, they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. And they got dumped into the water.
Oh.
Now, in case you're not familiar with remote viewers, let me fill you in on something.
Yeah, please do.
In the mid 70s and mid 80s, there was something called Project Stargate. And that's when they used people with the talent of remote viewing who could basically close their eyes and see things happening in other places to try to look over into foreign powers to see if they were getting ready to attack us. That was done at the Stanford Research Institute. Yes, Stanford University. It was headed by the CIA, and three of the main remote viewers were Joe McMoneagle, Ingo Swann, and Russell Targ. Now, there are plenty of books about this. It's fairly common knowledge now. What happened is they did a little bit too good of a job, and the government publicly said they closed the project. Well, they didn't. It's still going on now, and I know some of those folks. They still do it. And it's a fairly accepted method of trying to do espionage across oceans and enemy lines. So I figured, what's wrong with me trying to use the same thing? And then I get the same results from two different remote viewers. It's frightening. In fact, one of the remote viewers didn't want to talk to me about it for a while because she said, John, I saw something and that car stopped and it was a mess. There's been no report of the autopsy. That has never been reported in public record down there on exit on mile marker 95. So, without giving away any more information about these boys, it was a terrible thing, and we believe, me and many people in the Kershaw County area believe that their fate was the result of being at the wrong place, at the wrong time, and meeting a cryptid. End of story number one. Next, please.
That's insane.
Wow, that's crazy. What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't...
I've got pictures from the whole thing. Those trees are down there, right past the embankment. So I mean, what people said is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's frightening. Now, we don't know if it was a lizardman. We don't know if it was a Bigfoot, and they must have got out and made them mad, or we don't know what it was. But the preponderance of evidence is that these boys met their end in an utterly sinister and paranormal manner. I mean, you guys talk about this, and you talk about cryptids, and if you mess around with stuff like this in the wrong way, you can be in trouble, correct?
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. And now I'll start mentioning that all these stories in about 2 weeks will be out in Lizardman 101 on Amazon. if I can give a shameless plug, Lizardman 101 on Amazon in about 2 weeks.
That's what you're here for.
We're trying to get
Heck yeah.
We're trying to get
Yeah.
We're trying to get everything wrapped up. I, of course, will send all three of you a copy.
Oh,
Thank
Oh
you.
gosh, thank you so much.
If I didn't, because I want you to see these stories in writing and say, golly, they're kind of crazy, but they're kind of cool. So that's the first story. Now, do I have time to tell a second short story?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is the Lizardman, or the Lizard People of Los Angeles.
Of Los Angeles,
Oh.
yes, I'm ready.
I heard that
That's
name
right.
before.
Now, Eli, you don't count because I've talked with you about this. But Stefan and I, you heard about the lizard people of Los Angeles?
Only from Eli, but not really in depth, so I'm ready.
Okay, here's what happened. This is a very interesting story. I get involved in all kinds of stuff like this, and I think it's one. Oh, by the way, I got to tell you, but before I tell this story, I was just talking with Reginald Fullwood today. He's a really good friend of mine, and he's from Sumter, South Carolina, and he did the first Lizardman movie. It was released in 2018, and he's going to be up here. We're gonna show that at the next Lizardman Festival. He's out there in Los Angeles. I'll try to hook you guys up with him. Super nice guy. And he's met with some success on that Lizardman film. So, Eli, remind me that when we talk here later tonight or the next day, I'll hook you guys up with him. He's really great, and you should get to know him and maybe get to talk to him on your show.
Cool.
I did that
thank
a
you.
long time ago, and it's a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So let me tell you about the lizard people of Los Angeles.
Ooh, yeah.
In 19, a man came into the office of the L.A. Times, and he said that he had created a map of a tunnel system under Los Angeles. And in that tunnel system lived the lizard people. They were human-looking people of great intelligence, and they worshipped the lizard. Now, back in time, you'll see that various groups of folks have worshipped the bear, the monkey, all kinds of different animals. Well, they worshipped the lizard. But I just kind of found them because it said the lizard people. And so I said, I saw I could put this in the book because, you can't have a lizard man but the lizard people. So it turns out he got an agreement with the city of Los Angeles, go dig to try to find the tunnel system because there were thousands of pounds of gold in there.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
As in the early 30s. Well, how did he get the map of that tunnel system? Now, if you remember at the very beginning of the show, we talked about dowsing rods, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He had a pendulum dowsing system. Basically, he had a glass case, and he had a copper wire with a rock on the end of it, and he used that to construct this map of the tunnels. So they started digging for him, and digging, and they couldn't find anything. Then they got down to 22 and a half feet, and unfortunately, where is Los Angeles located? It's located right next to what body of water?
The Pacific Ocean.
So once you get to 22 feet, the shaft that they were digging fills up with what?
Water.
Ocean water.
Yeah, kind of a mess. You can get much past that. So various people tried for about 15 years, and they never could get past that barrier of 22 to 30 feet before the thing started filling up with water.
Hmm.
But there were a lot of people who seemed to know about the lizard people. There were a lot of psychics who talked about it. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to find out, is this map, and this map is in my book, Lizardman 101, Amazon.com in 2 weeks. I've got a copy of the map in there, and I wanted to see if the map is legit. All right, the map is from 1930. We weren't around. How do I check to see if this is real? What technique do I use?
Remote viewing.
Oh.
Who said that? You get the A+.
Oh, that
Who
was
said
me.
that?
That was me, John. It doesn't count. I've been talking to you.
It counts. You're pretty cool, Eli. You're cool. I'll give you the A+. I'll give all three of you the A+.
Yeah.
You shared knowledge, and it was a paper. So yeah, and I cracked out 2 remote viewers who took the map at the same time went into different rooms and said it's not quite right. They made modifications, and I'll be damned if they didn't come up with the same modifications of that map. And they said that is real. But those tunnels are far deeper than any 30 feet. They're anywhere between 10 and 80 feet deep. And they both showed me where it was 10 feet deep. Now, I'm not telling on this show, nor am I telling in the book. We may be going, hey guys, we may be going out there where it's 10 feet deep and getting a shovel. How's that?
I'm ready, dude.
So there's my second story. There's the story of the lizard people of Los Angeles.
Crazy.
That story lives today. In fact, you even have a podcast out there. There's two girls that talk about conspiracy theories. And I don't think they're into investigating. And,
No.
I came from a scientific background. I got my doctorate at North Carolina State. And believe me, if you're going to talk about something, you better have investigated it. And so the best thing I can do when you're talking about reality, 75 years ago, better get a remote viewer that is proven.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So there we go. There are a couple stories from the Lizardman 101 book. Available on Amazon in 2 weeks. Yay.
Can't wait to read more.
Yeah, those
Yes.
are awesome. Those are crazy. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of scary.
Honestly, yeah. And let me just say this, too, because I know, Dr. John Stamey, you sent me the, like, a lot of the articles you pulled up for the lizard people underneath Los Angeles. Now, I had heard that before, but I was just, like, amazed by how much you pulled up, like, and with, like, good sources as well. It wasn't just, like, wackadoo websites. They're, like, LA Times, New York Times, like, good sources that you just, like, pulled up out of nowhere. And so I just have to say that, like, you know, if anyone has their research down, it's definitely you, for sure.
Well, I believe in the paranormal, but I also believe in real scientific and historical research. And when you put the two together, you can find things that become irrefutable. I mean, there are things that have happened that people cannot explain. And the people that say, "Oh, it doesn't exist," "Oh, you're crazy," it's like my Bigfoot experience. And I was gonna. This was my last. This is a short story, but it's a very real story. Because Eli, you know me a little bit, and I think most people. I've got I have 3 master's degrees, Wake Forest University, University of Tennessee, and Clemson University, and my doctorate from North Carolina State University. I have 64 refereed research publications. And I'm not going to put something out there that doesn't have any real basis because, I've worked all my life to be known as a reasonable researcher.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was I put together the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. And I'm a huge fan of Bigfoot. Not a big one, but a huge fan. I have friends that have had experiences. I have friends that communicate. I have friends with Bigfoot to this moment.
Whoa.
I have friends that have written books about Bigfoot that are world famous. And they're friends of mine, and I'm kind of part of that research group. And so what happened was I go up to Clayton, Georgia, and that's in the very north corner of Georgia. That is, and when I say up in the North Georgia mountains, you need to get the idea that we're way up there. You know what I mean? And there's lots of trees, there's not a lot of roads, and it's just like there's nothing there. And so I stay with a friend of mine. He's got a cabin, and so when I go up there to the area, I can stay there. He doesn't charge me because it makes it so that I can actually go up there and do a good job promoting my conference, the Georgia Bigfoot Conference. And I really, really appreciate him and his wife for letting me stay there. And so I had an experience about 120 days ago, and it petrified me. I got in about 11 o'clock at night. I'd been up in Franklin, North Carolina, just above the state line, across the state line, working on another event. So I got there at 11 o'clock. I was totally exhausted. So I got there to the cabin. I had driven by their house to let them know I was there. Then I drove on up to the cabin. And there's nothing around there. And gentlemen, when I say there's nothing there, There's nothing there.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it was just I'm by myself. So I get in the cabin. I throw my duffel bag there. Sit down. I fix me a drink. I hope that's okay to say on the show.
Oh yeah.
I fix me a vodka, and I'm just sitting there, kind of breathing, just kind of having. God, what a long day this was. You know, I left Myrtle Beach at like 6 o'clock in the morning. It's 11 at night. I've driven all over creation, but it was a good day. So I'm just trying to relax. And then I heard something over to the left side of the cabin. I said, oh, it's probably a squirrel or a raccoon or, you know, something. And then it got quiet. I said, well, whatever. And I took another drink. And all of a sudden, something slammed into the left wall of that cabin. It's a one-room cabin, which it's about 20 feet by 10 feet, okay? And he built it. Something slammed into it so hard that all the furniture moved. It was like a mini earthquake.
Weird.
I thought, oh, God, I hope this is not the big one. You know, because I'm always expecting an earthquake to wipe everything out, like that movie 2012.
Oh damn.
You know, like the bald dude in the road, and he gets on the gong, and here comes the wave. Anyway, something slammed in there, and that was terrible. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I started hearing footsteps leaves out in the woods. And you know how, if you look at your foot, and everybody listening to this show, look at your foot. It's like 10 to 11 to 12 inches long, you know, with your shoes on and everything. And you know about the amount of time it would take to go from your heel to your toe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it went heel, space, toe, like the most gigantic foot. And it started on the middle of the left side of the cabin, and it came around the front, and it got about 2 feet from the door. And I knew what was happening. I said, this cannot be happening to me. I'm up there by myself. And I looked at my phone, and it was at 17%. And I've got 17% means you got one call left.
That is true.
That is the most frightened I've ever been in my life. I knew what was going on. And then it stopped. It got deathly silent. No crickets, no nothing. So I quietly reached up, pulled the chain off the light, and just sat there. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew I was, at one point, I was 8 to 10 feet away from Bigfoot.
Whoa.
I knew that. And I waited, and apparently I just dozed off to sleep, woke up at 3 in the morning, the crickets were chirping. All was back to normal, but I said, I am not walking out of this place until 7 a.m. and the sun is up shining. And that's the most frightened I've ever been, because I knew something was going on. Nobody had to explain to me. You're a bipedal, two-legged entity walking. So that's my Bigfoot story, and that's in my book. That's in, what is it? Look Up the Sky, UFOs, Aliens, Anomalies. That's available on Amazon right now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dope.
So I have been blessed to have had experiences and to have recorded experiences. I believe they're real. I think when you go out there and you go just outside the standard world, and you can the fringes, you can experience things. So I'd like to say, if I may, I mean, golly, all I've done is talk. I'd like to say, does anybody have a question? I hope I haven't talked too much.
Oh, no, not at all.
possible.
Not possible.
Well,
That's why, hey guys, that's why I can't keep a girlfriend. They say I talk too much.
It's all good though.
I had a question. It's not like cryptid or paranormal based, but I had a question, just a general question for you. You mentioned earlier that you used to watch wrestling back in the day. Did you have a favorite wrestler?
Now, that's the best question you could ask. Because I run a number of Comic-Cons and festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, I have favorites. But in the course of running Comic-Cons, I ran into this guy, Maestro, who's Papa Stro, the Maestro of wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And we became very close friends. And we are close friends to this day. And, in fact, he guest starred at all of my Comic-Cons. Now, if you're eaten up with wrestling and you're in love with wrestling, let me describe who you would like, which wrestler you would like to have as one of your best friends. Are you ready?
Yeah.
You would like to have as one of your best friends the wrestler whose great uncle invented professional wrestling, invented the concept of the heel, and invented the concept of the storyline. And moreover than that, you'd want your best friend as a wrestler to end up being Gorgeous George's grandnephew.
Whoa.
Real Gorgeous George, the highest paid entertainer in 1995 and 1996 in the world. And so Rob Kellum, Maestro, is one of my very best friends. And we talk about every other day. He and I, we're both going to be at a couple of Comic-Cons, and we'll have dinner and everything. So I got to say that the Maestro, Papa Stro, is one of my very best friends. He's my favorite wrestler. He's introduced me to a lot of the older guys. I used to actually announce professional wrestling.
Yeah?
And my favorite old-time wrestler was a guy named Nelson Royal.
Okay.
And I got to meet him and talk to him for an hour right before he died. And it was a life-changing experience.
Wow.
One of the nicest people I ever met. So I've kind of been hooked up with wrestling for 20 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I got to know some of these guys. I got to meet the Anderson brothers.
Whoa.
You ever heard of Gene Anderson?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's incredible. That's awesome.
Oh, my goodness. Did you hear my story? Hello?
Hello. No,
yeah.
I did
Yeah.
not. No.
I'm sorry. I had a computer malfunction, just like the Iowa caucus did. Did you hear my story or not?
No, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the Anderson
Okay,
brothers?
good. So anyway, I'd say my favorite wrestler was a guy named Nelson Royal, the Texan, and of course Maestro is one of my buddies, and he and I hang out a couple times a month at events and everything. So I love wrestling. I do.
That's cool.
The biggest wrestling geek you ever. They call geeks a mark because we just love it, and I love it. I just love wrestling. Next question. Ask me stuff. I hope I haven't talked too much. Next question, please.
I was gonna ask when the next Lizardman festival is.
Oh my goodness. You can't ask until next week.
Okay.
Yeah, didn't you know?
But I think I've got to sign the contract this week. But I think it's going to be the weekend in June.
Okay.
I'm always careful about when is it going to be. I got to make sure I have that contract because I've done that before. We've had an oral agreement, and all of a sudden, oh, we didn't say that, and I knew we did. But it should be. How's that? It should be the first weekend in
June.
In June, and it should be in the state of South Carolina, like it should be. and Eli, I'll call you and tell you, and you can announce it next week. Okay?
Okay. All right. I will.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I don't know if you guys had any more questions.
No?
I mean, I think we got, some good stories, and I'm definitely excited to check out more
Some
from
juicy
Lizard.
details, dude.
Ooh.
But I think that's about all the time we got for today, John.
John, hit us with your release date one more time.
Okay, it should be within 2 weeks. Here's what I'll do. Eli, I'll send you an email and let you know if you can let folks know when Lizardman 101's coming out. I've got the final part of this book. I've got to do an interview with Lyle Blackburn, and then we're finished. It's a wrap. Everything else is edited, and we'll go from there. So all I got to say is thank you guys so much for having me on here. It's been a lot of fun. I love talking about the things that really mean a lot to me, and that's the cryptid research and Lizardman and Bigfoot, of course.
Oh yeah.
My Bigfoot buddies they're the best. I'll tell you.
Right on. Well, I'm glad I was able to get you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Good time.
You're welcome. I mean, just anytime. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You know, I enjoyed talking to you, so. Yeah.
Thank you. Eli, I got to talk to you about some stuff. It's all cool.
Yeah, I know.
It's all great. So I'll hit you up soon. And gentlemen, thank you. And if you ever want to talk to me about Lizardman or Bigfoot, get my number from Eli, and I'm always glad to talk about it. And I can get out in the LA area very soon because I've got some research I want to do, and love to meet all of you guys. And
Cool.
it's a great time.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Right on. So, Alex, if I want to find you online, how do I do that?
Well, if you want to find me on Instagram or Twitter, I'm at Alex Daikaiju. That's Alex Daikaiju. And what about you, fella?
You can find me on Instagram at MyersSteffen. That's MYERSSTEFFEN.
What about you?
You can find me at the Eli Watson on Instagram. You can also follow the official at Cryptid Campfire Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can go to our official website,
cryptidcampfire.com,
Whoa.
where you can get your official Cryptid Campfire t-shirt.
One and only.
Except no substitutes.
Right?
No,
go ahead.
I was like, and we got the Patreon going.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and check that out. We're putting up some new content. Be there. You get early access episodes, exclusive episodes, maybe even a Toby log every so often. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email us at cryptidcampfirepodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.